All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We are in the middle of a massive structural shift right now in the AI space. We're officially moving away from the era of casual AI chatbots and stepping into the highly structured, programmatic, multi-agent ecosystems of 2026. If you felt like your AI tools are starting to behave a bit differently lately, or if your big enterprise rollouts are suddenly hitting a wall, well, this is exactly why. So today, we're going to zoom out layer by layer. We'll start with a reality check on where AI is in 2026, look at the death of verbose prompting, figure out how to mathematically bound the hallucination problem, explore the new multi-agent workforce, and finally, talk about governing the agentic enterprise. Let's get to it. Kicking things off with Section 1, the 2026 AI Reality Check. Okay, so check out this current paradox. McKinsey recently found that while 92% of companies are planning to ramp up their AI spend, they are literally pouring money into this, only a staggering 1% actually consider themselves mature in their deployment. 1%. That is a massive, massive gap between investment and actual capability. And it gets even clearer when you look at the financial outcomes. Right now, only 19% of U.S. executives are seeing generative AI drive revenue increases of more than 5%. Meanwhile, 36% are reporting completely flat revenues. So what does this tell us? It tells us that just throwing raw investment at AI doesn't automatically equal an ROI. The magic isn't in just buying the software anymore. It's entirely about how you architect it. Which brings us right to Section 2, the death of verbose prompting. Now, you guys probably remember how we used to handle complex tasks, like a year or two ago. We leaned heavily on frameworks like React. We basically had to hold the model's hand, forcing it to cycle through its reasoning. First generate a thought, then take an action, observe the result, and repeat. We really had to coax the logic out of it. But here's the wild part. Doing that today will actually hurt your performance. With native 2026 thinking models, things like DeepSeek R1 or OpenAI's O1, the entire architecture has shifted. We used to literally beg legacy models to think step by step. But these modern models, they have reinforcement learned logic baked right into their pre-training. They do all that deep deliberation internally before they output a single word. So if you feed them those old, heavy prompts, you're actually degrading their performance. What you need now are incredibly minimalist, direct task descriptions. But of course, there's a catch, right? Because they do all this intense internal thinking. They choose through a ridiculous amount of tokens before they even answer you. So to handle that heavy token consumption and the latency that comes with it, developers are rolling out the chain of draft protocol. By instructing the system to limit its internal processing steps to super brief drafts of under 5 words, teams are slashing token usage by up to 80%. And the best part? You don't lose any of that analytical depth. It's a total game changer for engineering efficiency. All right, let's move to Section 3, bounding the hallucination problem. The industry has finally realized you can't just slap a system prompt on an AI asking it to, please be truthful. That just doesn't work. Instead, we're using a whole stack of solutions to mathematically bound the problem. At the parameter level, you've got LoRa, which is basically a modular memory upgrade. At the preference level, there's FDPO. And then at the decoding level for vision models, you have frameworks like Marine that physically force the AI to ground its answers in real-time images it actually sees. Let's zoom in on FDPO for a second. Factuality-aware direct preference optimization. Historically, we essentially trained these models to be confident liars. They were rewarded for sounding fluent, which meant they were often highly articulate while being completely wrong. FDPO actually alters the training math to actively penalize answers that are articulate but incorrect. By forcing the system to prioritize actual factual truth over just sounding good, developers are driving a massive 5x drop in error rates on models like QM38B. And we can't talk about bounding without talking about memory, because it's a huge cost factor. We have absolutely got to stop context stuffing, just dumping 50,000 tokens of PDF text into a prompt. Not only does that lead to that lost-in-the-middle memory rot, where the AI just forgets crucial details, but it's wildly expensive. We're talking up to $48,000 a month at scale. But if you transition to trained machine learning ranking models that filter data down to a highly targeted 2,500 tokens, you can drop those API query costs to around $4,500 a month, all while improving accuracy. Okay, zooming out a bit, let's hit Section 4. Enter the multi-agent workforce. So imagine you've got multiple AI agents trying to talk to multiple enterprise databases. Building custom APIs for every single one of those connections is an absolute nightmare.
That's why the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, is such a breakthrough standard. It acts as a unified interaction layer using JSON RPC 2.0, completely replacing those fragile point-to-point APIs. By standardizing these connections, companies like Block have literally reduced their token overhead by a staggering 98.7%.
But hold on, because deploying MCP requires extreme caution. First off, it introduces some serious latency, anywhere from 600 milliseconds to 3 seconds. But more alarmingly, early security audits are showing that 82% of tested open-source MCP servers are vulnerable to path traversal, meaning yes, hackers could snoop through your directories. And 67% allow malicious code injection. So you absolutely need least privilege connectors and continuous automated penetration testing before you let these agents loose on your data.
Which perfectly tees up our final layer, Section 5, Governing the Agentic Enterprise. Gartner's maturity roadmap perfectly captures just how aggressively this is evolving. I mean, look at this timeline. In 2025, we just had isolated AI assistants. Now in 2026, we're building task-specific agents. Next year, we'll see collaborative agents sharing context, leading to fully unified cross-app ecosystems by 2028. This is a complete operational paradigm shift. And that brings us to the human side of the equation. The BSI hit the nail on the head here. Organizations are facing a massive skills gap. Because AI is taking over the heavy baseline lifting of generating content and code, your workers have to transition. They have to move away from being creators and start acting like directors, verifying AI outputs, orchestrating complex workflows, and applying real business judgment. Because if you don't update your human workflows and governance, it is going to cost you. Frost & Sullivan warns that without strict controls like real-time compliance monitoring and dual authorization, reaching just 25% agent adoption will cause your application dev costs to jump by 16%, and your oversight costs, those will completely spiral by 34%. Automation without orchestration is just a recipe for really expensive chaos. So I want to leave you with a really tough question today. Are your enterprise workflows genuinely ready for the agentic workforce, or are you just prompting in the past? Because relying on the magic chatbots of yesterday is no longer a viable strategy. The technology has matured, the architecture is here, but the real question is, has your operating model matured with it?